All right, so in this video, we're going to cover everything to do with the ColDesi C20 heat press. We're going to go over how to use some of the features on it. We're going to press with it, and then we're going to go over how to solve some basic troubleshooting. All right, so we have the control panel here. Let's go over everything you need to know about the control panel. So, obviously, the most important part of using any heat press is how to adjust the temperature and time. What you're going to go ahead and do is just press the set button right here. This is going to cause the temperature to start dancing in and out there. And this is how we know it's selected. So now from here, we can just use the up or down arrows in order to adjust the temperature as needed. And then when we find the temperature that we want, let's say we're here at 305, we're going to go ahead and just hit set. Now we're going to move on to the time. Once we hit that set button for the temperature, it's going to cause the time to now start dancing in and out. This is where we can adjust the time here using the same arrows as so. So we're going to set this at a DTF transfer setting currently here, which is about 300 degrees for 10 seconds. So once we have our time selected, we can hit set again. Now we're going to move on to the counter here. This is a little bit more optional depending on what you're doing. What the counter is for is that this is just a stat to track for how many completed presses you may be doing in a row. Think of it like a trip odometer in your car. That being said, you could obviously change it if you use this as an indicator of progress. Let's say you have a 50 shirt job that needed 50 presses and you stopped at 25. So we can say set that to 25 and that'll reflect in the counter. Now from here in the bottom left corner, you have the number 1 there. This is actually for either steps or presets. I like to treat it like steps in that if I was doing DTF transfers here, most DTF transfers after they're pressed and peeled once want a 5-second follow-up in the following press. So the way we're going to do that is that if you hold down this button at the bottom left here for long enough, you're going to notice that that bottom left number changed to the number 2. This means we're on preset 2. So now we can adjust and set the time and temperature for a different time. And then when we want to swap in between those two, we just need to hold that button and swap from 1 to 2. So we're gonna go ahead and set this to 5 seconds here. We're gonna keep the counter the same. And now, whenever we're pressing DTF transfers, you have this already all set. If you hold down this button for longer, there are up to 4 presets on the C20 here. But we're gonna go all the way back to number 1. And yeah, that's everything about the control panel for the ColDesi C20. We're gonna move on to the other features. All right, so now we went ahead and went behind the heat press. Everything you need to know about what's back here is that simply you have your power switch right here. This is actually a fuse. So if you have any power difficulties and you notice that this has popped, you could go ahead and press this button in order to reset everything. You then have the power cord right here. As always, an important thing to do would be to just make sure that this connection is stable and steady here. Below the back of the heat press here, you have 2 connections here. This one is the main heat connector here. This essentially tells the platen what the control panel is telling it to heat up to and then controlling that heat. You also have the second connector here. This is mainly for the electromagnet that's on the top of the platen, that when you press it shut, it's going to hold it closed and maintain that same pressure. Another thing to note about the C20 is that the platen does slide like other traditional models of heat presses. And then if you lower the top here, you'll find your pressure knob right here that you can adjust depending on different sizes and firmness of media. All right, so when it comes to actually going ahead and pressing a shirt on the C20, it is very, very similar to any other heat press system. So what you're gonna do is just lay out the shirt on the platen here, make sure that everything is even. You can even go ahead and use the heat press to press it down and just make sure that the surface area is flat. Then go ahead, take your transfer, center that design on there. And then depending on the process, you don't have to do this with DTF transfers, but it helps more than it hinders is to use a finishing sheet. So we're just going to go ahead and take that. And then with the C20 specifically, you're going to press down until this magnet here locks. And when everything is said and done, the heat press is going to quite literally pop up because it's disengaging a very, very tight magnet. And then you can just take your transfer, peel it, and you're all said and done here. As we mentioned before, there is also the opportunity to use the presets here. So since DTF transfers need a 5-second timer in order to finish that transfer, I'm actually going to go ahead and set that to number 2 and then put down my finishing sheet once again here. I'm going to press this down, wait for that to lock in. 5 seconds are going to go by. It's going to pop. And then the transfer is all finished. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and go over some of the basic troubleshooting for things you might encounter. One thing to note here is, for example, I may have only needed to press this for 10 seconds, but now I have a minute timer on here and I can't disengage it. What you're actually going to go ahead and do is that you're going to walk over here. There's this green button on the left side of the control panel. You're going to hit that. That's going to release the heat press here. That's one of your best friends in case you ever need to disengage your press. Another important thing to note is that this platen moves, and if things go wrong, you might have something where all of a sudden something might be stuck in here. You might have your design pulling off one direction. You might have your shirt going a different way. An important thing to note is always just make sure that the front of the platen closest to the control panel here is always accessible and free of any sort of like debris or obstacle in the way of it. That way this can just move freely. All right, moving on back to the back side of the heat press here. The most important thing you can encounter is that you might have some power issues here. The first thing to check is always make sure that the power cord is stable and connected here. And then if that is stable and connected, but you're still having power issues, you should just go ahead and hit this button right here. This is a fuse. And if you ever have anything like a power outage or a power surge, this may have popped, and pressing this button is just the way to re-engage that. All right, and that's everything you really need to know about your ColDesi C20 heat press. For any more information, the best thing to do would be to either live chat with us online or give us a call. Thanks for watching.